and I'm going to really make this clear, that people are easily manipulated. And that's the sad part, is that there are people out there that aren't educated on the issues, aren't educated on the candidates. And really, if you're realistic, not everybody can really study up on all this stuff. But that's the job of the media, to hold politicians and candidates accountable for what they say and what they don't say, what they do and what they don't do. But sometimes they drop the ball. Like I'll recall one interview. There was a expose, if you will, on Channel 6, and I'll call them out on it. Channel 6 did a series of profiles on all the gubernatorial candidates, and I remember one interview. The reporter said, "So you really care about the issues that you're talking about?" Of course they're going to say they care about the issues. That's what it they're not going to say, "Oh, well, I don't care about it." It's this idea that the state level media has dropped the ball in asking the tough questions, getting the answers people deserve. And that's why it's really reliant not only on public access like Biddeford Public Access to ask those tough questions, but also the state level media needs to step up their game. Ask a question that's actually going to delve through the surface, through the manipulation, through the rhetoric to get to the meat of the issue. And I know when I do political interviews, that's what I try to do. They may not like it, and they will tell you afterwards, "I can't believe you asked me that question." But it's so critically important because they're just going to give you their talking points. They have a number of bullets that they're going to tell you because that's what they need to do to get elected. "Oh, well, you need to support me because I'm for jobs." Well, how are you going to specifically do that? How are you going to deliver on your promises? What are you going to specifically do to create those jobs? And 9 times out of 10, these politicians will get flustered if you ask them follow-up questions that actually delve into their past experiences, delve into what they're specifically, and this key word is specifics. Get specifics from the candidates because they will tell you general BS. They're going to tell you anything you want to hear to get elected. Most of the time. Now, there are some candidates who may not do that, but in my previous experience, 9 times out of 10, they will do that. That they're politicians. They want to get elected. They want to hold on to that power or gain more power. But I digress. I get off topic here. But in terms of Libby Mitchell, she's going to have a challenge. Now, she's probably the lead-in terms of the November lineup. Paul LePage is probably the underdog. And Libby Mitchell is probably, right now, the front runner. However, Libby Mitchell is going to face some significant issues going into the November election. Why? Because people are frustrated. People want change in Augusta. And whether Paul LePage is that change or not, that's what his campaign's all about. That's why he did have such a good grassroots movement. Now, you may disagree with some of his issues, and we could probably talk all day long about and we're going to get to some of his political philosophies in another program, and we're going to kind of delve into these candidates. We're just kind of focusing on the results right now. But he's really presenting himself as, hey, I'm an outsider. I was a mayor of the city of Waterville. I run Martin's, which is a great job creator in the state. You know, he has a lot of good things going for him that's outside of Augusta. Libby Mitchell has been there for decades. Now, for some people, that's a good thing. For some people, they want that experience that they can start day one. That's the rhetoric. I can start day one. Well, everybody has to start day one, you know. But it's this idea that Libby Mitchell wants to start the ground running. If you compare Hillary Clinton's run for the presidency and Libby Mitchell's run for the governor's race, they're almost identical in terms of what she's talking about, her talking points and everything. She's coming from, I'm entitled to this position. And it comes across that way in terms of if I'm like looking at her just from that perspective. And I'm not supporting any particular candidate here. I'm just giving you my analytical analysis. And I'm looking at her, and she's saying that I'm entitled to this position. That comes across negatively. You know, no one's entitled to anything. They have to earn it. What are you going to do for me? What are you going to do to create jobs and return this state to fiscal responsibility? And I have a question for Libby Mitchell. And I have a lot of questions for Paul LePage, too. And I hope to have their opportunity to interview them. And I invite them both to appear on Biddeford Public Access. And I know it's been a little difficult to get Libby on this program, on this channel, but I invite them both because I think it's really important. I'd love to ask Libby Mitchell. You've been there for decades. Have you dropped the ball? Our state is facing major economic woes. We're going to be facing a $1 billion deficit next year in terms of our budget. $1 billion that the state's going to have to make up. How are you going to do that? And it's not like this has been a new issue. Maine has been facing these issues for years, and you've been a part of this process. So how are you going to differentiate yourself from the Augusta insiders that people are so frustrated right now? There's such a level of anti-incumbency. How is she going to overcome that? And that's going to be her biggest challenge, is distancing herself. Now, she's probably not going to distance herself from that because she prides herself. If you talk to her, she prides herself on her experience, which some people like. But I beg to differ that that's going to be a significant factor in this election. The significant factor is people want change. People do not want the same old way of doing things like Libby Mitchell represents. People want something different. Now, whether Paul LePage is that person or not, who knows? You know, we got to delve into his background. And I talked to a lot of people at the polls. They've never even heard of Paul LePage. And so it's one of those things where now's the time, the vetting process, looking into their backgrounds, going onto their websites, checking out what they want in terms of what they're going to do moving forward. But it's so critically important that you as a citizen research, that you as a citizen delve into it. Because if the media drops the ball, you're going to get screwed because you're either going to be easily manipulated by the political rhetoric, or you're going to just kind of think, oh, well, I know that person's name, I'm going to vote for them. Don't do that. Research. Find out what are they specifically going to do. Because a lot of times, they don't give you specifics. They'll be like, well, I want to create jobs. Well, that's nice. How are you going to do it? Now, to some people, they're like, as soon as they hear the word, I'm going to create jobs, they're like, oh, I'll vote for you. But then they're not like, oh, well, how are they going to do that? And especially if a politician's been in Augusta for a while, and then they're like, well, I'm gonna create change, and I'm gonna bring about hope, and I'm gonna create all these jobs. Well, what have you been doing for the last couple decades? But I digress. I really get frustrated because it's kind of like, hello, you can't say you're for change and you've been a part of the establishment for decades. But at the same time, Paul LePage isolates a lot of people because he's so far to the right that he's very conservative, and especially for liberal Democrats and for just moderate Democrats, moderate voters in general, independents, that might isolate them.